Is New York admitting defeat to crime in the streets?
Start spreading the news. We're all gonna die.
Oh my God!
I never get tired of that. Is it too late to save the Empire State? In New York, the quality of life here is dropping faster than charges against a rioter. Anti-Asian hate crimes continue to plague New York City. Police say nearly 50% of all suspects arrested for these attacks are mentally ill. Some were so nuts they thought reducing cops wouldn't increase crime. Many of these attacks are accompanied by racial slurs. And apparently these white supremacist attackers are so deep undercover, they're of other races. Me. The latest happening on Tuesday in broad daylight in Midtown. A man walking with his son was attacked and had a piece of his finger bitten off. I'm sure liberal activists will say the attacker was just hungry and demand a government program to provide finger food. So things are getting out of hand, figuratively and literally. Even former criminals are calling for more policing. An ex-con who was the victim of a subway slashing has called for a crackdown on the violence. Maybe that's the mayor's strategy. Make the city too dangerous for criminals. He said, quote, "I feel like a lot of these guys are not going to be held accountable and they just feel like they can go out and harass people or attack them." It's true. It's sad when our criminals demand more accountability than our governor. Speaking of our hands-on chief exec, according to the New York Times, feds are investigating whether Cuomo arranged priority COVID testing for his family early on in the pandemic. His brother Chris seems to have returned the favor by consulting on Andrew's media strategy in response to sexual assault allegations. Thankfully, a different Andrew Giuliani, is running for governor, which raises the question, how can he win if he doesn't have a famous dad like Cuomo? So, I have to ask, what's your dad think about you running?
Well, I got to first say about Cuomo right there in terms of the priority testing. Sure. If I had a ghostwriter that was going to get me a $5 million book deal, I would get him priority testing too. I mean, come on.
That's true.
What my dad thinks is he wants to get revenge. And let me explain that a little bit. As we referenced before, I might have done a few different things as a rambunctious youngster. Yeah. So when I do get elected and inaugurated on January 1st of 2023, my father is going to have the worst seats at the inauguration he possibly can. He cannot be anywhere near that podium. Period.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. What do you think New York needs? I mean, what do you think the city needs?
The city needs basically three things, right? We got to reduce crime, record-settingly reduce crime. I think there was another guy who said that, I don't know, like 30 years ago. Anyway, it's forgetting my mind right there. Yes. School choice, right? Yes. We need to increase charter schools.
Of course.
And by the way, that's more of a blue policy than a red policy. I mean, think about who that affects. I was very blessed. I was lucky enough to go to parochial school because my parents had the means. If you don't, then you're stuck.
Exactly.
And third, we have to relight the economic furnace that is New York. It can happen. It can happen now.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Thank you.
Tom, being a psychopath, you actually enjoy the rise in crime.
Well, that is what this story is. Earlier, Greg, yes, I made the point about the fact that the media comes up with a counter story to counter a story that they don't like. Mm. And the story that they don't like is that crime is rising in Democrat-run cities. Yes. So what do they say? Now, of course, yes, crimes against Asians are up because crime is up, because Democrats ruined the cities. So what do? They say, oh, the reason the crime against Asians is up is because Donald Trump said China virus.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, it's the classic story. And then they say, how dare you say China virus? And then they lock down their own cities. They let Antifa run wild. They ruin their own cities. And we have to deal with that. And the Asian community is bearing the brunt of it just like everybody else is.
Exactly. And there are a lot of elderly Asians that are getting hammered, almost literally cacked.
Yes.
Okay, so part of the story was about, and I do believe that a lot of these attackers are mentally ill. I drive up every day on 6th Avenue. Actually, I have a driver, but
You don't drive.
yeah, I never drive in New York. I'm too busy doing important things in the back seat, like drinking heavily.
Yeah.
What was the question? Oh, so we gave $800 million to de Blasio's wife for this mental health initiative, and we're seeing more mentally ill on the street. It's insane.
Even
literally insane.
Even on the set.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And there's this narrative that people are overreacting. New York isn't that bad. It's conservative talking about. There's a recent poll that came out. Crime, the #1 issue for New Yorkers is like crime. And de Blasio is coming out with all this stuff. Oh, eating French fries. And like, oh, we're going to have street performers. And everyone who lives here is like, I'd like to not get stabbed when I'm on my way to get a coffee.
Yes.
Can we work on that? And anybody who lives here feels this way because we're seeing it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Cuomo, I can't. The fact that he did it again, he's going to get priority testing for his, daughter and her boyfriend 2 days after the story came out, calling him out for using this to get priority testing. And at this point, it's all over the city. It's like, your daughter can go to City MD. It's not that hard. He doesn't care. Got to get rid of him.
Yeah. Cash, do you think NYC, you were born here?
Yes.
You lived in Queens, right? Are you sad when you come back here?
Well, the only reason that I'm slightly not sad is because I left the Communist Republic of D.C. to come up here on the train. So it's probably the only place that's worse with the lunacy down there than New York. But I am, heartened to hear Andrew and Kat talk about how New York can come back. It can. I mean, if I pause to talk about Asian hate crime, I think I'd be called a bigot. I mean, I'm technically South Asian, so I don't want to get into it. Outside of the Asian hate crime hoax, I think it's just crime. It's simple. I used to be a federal prosecutor. Like, you have to send people to jail and then not let them out.
Right.
Like, if you send a rapist to prison because he's an illegal immigrant and then you let him out and he commits rape again and then you give him health care, it kind of screws up your city.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's doable.
Also, a lot of these disgusting lawyers use the COVID thing to get people out. And there were people on the street because, we didn't want them to catch COVID in prison. Up next, Chris Rock explains how jokes work.